You have no place. Let's see, sorry. You have no place. You belong in the cave. You are a slave. So, can you share what you mean about not having space?
So this poem is a reflection of the segregation in the past where people of color were seen as inferiors and were deprived of opportunities that white people had. Referring to the modern day, although there are laws that have changed to give equal opportunities to people of all color, we tend to experience discrimination in our own country, which explains how we sometimes find we do not have a space of a sense of belonging. So I think in saying not having space, meaning sometimes you feel like you don't belong, even though you're from that place. Like I'm a Papua New Guinean. Sometimes I feel like I don't belong here because I tend to find that more respect, is given to someone with a white color skin compared to me as a Papua New Guinean. So no space in that sense.
Thank you for sharing that. Uh, so, so as far as the rights and everything, that kind of goes right into the next question on what does land ownership look like for Papua New Guinea? Are is there a hierarchy? How does it? If you're from Papua New Guinea, can do you like how does the land ownership work?
So there are a lot of disputes relating to land here in PNG. uh, the government owns bulk of the land within the city, like they have their own boundaries where they own the land. And the land outside of the city, like in remote areas, are customary land. So these are land that are owned by like the traditional landowners, but the land within the city is the bulk of it is owned by the government. So the government decides, how they want to use the land. If they want to sell the land to a foreigner, they sell the land. We've had like instances where a lot of people um, got evicted from a particular portion of land because a foreigner bought off the land, and and the government never considered the rights of these people or tried to resettle them, or have a proper process in place before the company moved in. So sometimes you find that, or in most cases here in PNG, if you're living in a remote area or in the province, then you're okay. But if you're living within the city, you could be affected because the land that you're settling belongs to the government, and if they choose to sell it to a foreigner, then you get displaced, and you tend to find your own way to live. So yeah, this is how it is here in PNG.
All right. So my next question, what I was kind of just thinking of, is what are the benefits for Papua New Guinea people to live in the city where the government owns the land and risking displacement? What are the benefits, and why is it that people would choose that versus just living on land that they can have? And whether your family has land or what would cause someone to want to be in that situation?
The main factor is the lack of government services to the remote areas. So the government services are more focused within the main city, like for example Port Moresby. This is where most of the government services are focused in. Whereas if I were to live, say, in my village in Oro, I wouldn't be able to access the services that I'm able to access here in the village, like health and education. These are two important services that are not available outside the center. Even if they are available, like it's not to a standard where you'd want to get your kids educated in. Like a lot of people come to the city because they believe that we have the best education facilities within the city compared to if you were living in the village, you wouldn't have access to that. Or health centers, hospitals. We don't have them outside. So a lot of people tend to migrate into the city because they want to have access to these services. And even though we know that it's a risk if you go and settle on land that it doesn't belong to you, even affording a home or renting out here is really expensive. Not a lot of people can afford to rent a decent place or buy a home. And most people that migrate into the city don't have formal jobs. They survive on like selling their vegetable produce at the market or something. So they're low income earners that cannot afford to rent a place to buy a home. So they tend to settle in places where it's more convenient for them to live and raise their families, and that's the reason why they choose to come here. But at the end of the day, when they get evicted and all of that, they have to find a way to survive again, because there are no existing government services that can support people who are placed in these situations.
Oh, thank you for educating me on that. I also kind of had a question about what you just explained in your experience, like how you went to the University of Papua New Guinea, which I assume is in the center, and then now you're back at home in Oro, and Oro is outside from the center, right?
No, I'm in Port Moresby right now.
Oh, Papmutsi.
Yeah.
And that is outside of the
Which,
center?
no, Port Moresby is the capital
Oh, it's the
city.
capital. Okay. Oh, so okay, so you teach and in the school systems that are in the city.
I work as a team assistant with the
Oh,
World Bank Group. That's my full-time job.
oh,
Yeah, so but I visit schools and talk about writing because I'm an author and because I'm an advocate for PNG literature. So that's what I do, like when
okay.
I'm free. But
Oh, okay. I thought you were a teacher. Thank you for clarifying. I'm glad you asked
no,
that
a lot of
question.
I get that a lot of times.
Okay, cool. So it's called a team assistant, you said?
Yes, team assistant. So my day-to-day job is just providing administrative support and all of that. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Okay. And then so oh sorry, my screen changed. So now that you kind of sorry, Lisiate, before I go on, go
Oh no,
ahead
you
and
can finish up,
chime in.
Josie. You can finish up.
Okay. So well, you're talking about land ownership and kind of explaining the situation with the government. And can you tell us about the part where it says belonging in a cave and being viewed as a slave? And if you can expand on that.
Yeah, I think referring back to my first point about segregation and discrimination, we become slaves in our own land. Like when our voices or identity or potentials are suppressed, and just going back to how the government tends to not prioritize its people over foreign companies that take ownership of our land. We were slaves in the sense, even though we belong here, we're rightfully, Papua New Guineans. The moment our rights are defied and the government prioritizes a foreign company over its own people, then we're considered slaves in our own land at the end of the day.
Thank you for answering that question. And I don't know, Lisiate, are you on and have a question?
Oh yeah. It was about another poem though. I didn't know if we were gonna stay on this one or if we were gonna.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. Actually, is there like a going in any particular order, or we're just kind of just picking poems and just asking questions? Like,
Yeah, just go ahead.
okay.
Any poem. The floor is yours. The mic is yours.
Okay. Kelly, I just want to ask about the poem titled "All Fingers at Me," and then the you also added a little part before it, where it says written from the point of view of a woman, and an advice my father gave me: man will always be men no matter what. And just tying it back to what Lilika was talking about as far as patriarchy and things like that, because that viewpoint is something I see a lot in Tongan culture as well. It's, oh, let the boys be boys. They do whatever they want, and then there's like this sacredness that like women need to be protected in a way that they can't protect themselves. And I just wanted to see do you, or I don't know if you agree, if you agree with that statement, but now that you're a mother, now that you're a wife, like, do you think that that statement still stands in Papua New Guinea, that men will always be men no matter what, and women just have to kind of deal with it, or what are your thoughts around that statement now, looking back at your writings earlier?
Yeah, I think the statement remains the same because the challenges are getting men to accept, the change in society, and you know, giving the introduction of modern society and the Western life. Like, you don't tend to see that, there are changes. Women tend to be, always in the limelight, wanting to be, doing certain things. Like, communities have yet to accept that people like me have, we have professional women who have full-time jobs, and this needs to be respected. Um, there's just so much conflict versus, especially with chores at home. Like, because I'm a mother, I should be doing this, and because you're a man, you shouldn't be doing this. So these are the conflicts that we face at home, like, every day. So sometimes it's good, sometimes we go back to this. So I don't think that there are any changes at all. Yeah.
Right. Sorry, it's a big question. I know. Sorry, but thank you for answering.
No worries. We're still getting there. It's not something that, it's not a change that can happen overnight. It's a process, and we're still going through that process. And until we reach a certain stage, or a big change in our society, then maybe that change might happen. But the change in terms of, what's happening at home, it's a process that we're going through. We just have to take it a step at a time. Yeah.
Thanks, Luciate. And then I know we have, it seems like a Tongan dominant space right now. But so my mother is part Tongan and grew up in Tonga, and we always talk about land ownership and how traditionally women can't own land. So is that the same in Papua New Guinea? Could women own land out there, or?
So we have matrilineal societies and we have patrilineal societies. Um, but the patrilineal societies are more dominant here in PNG, where the man owns the land. We have a few matrilineal societies where women own the land. So it's not completely like a practice where, men own the land or women own the land, but it's specific to a specific cultural group or an ethnic group, where the society is a patrilineal society. So men tend to be the owners of the land. And then we have certain societies where it's a matrilineal society, so women are the ones that own the land. And then we have matrilineal society, so women are the ones that in terms of land ownership and how things are done, it's not standard throughout the country, because we've got like 22 provinces and a very diverse culture. So the practices are different from one culture to another. Yeah.
So I just want
Awesome.
to jump in. I love that, that you mentioned that, because I've just recently learned that Papua New Guinea has hundreds of different languages, and it's a huge island. It's like one of the top five biggest islands. And see, that just shows my ignorance as a Polynesian person. It's like I had no idea how big and vast Papua New Guinea was. How how many different cultures there are, you know. So it's amazing to learn that there's matrilineal and patrilineal. Like that's how big of an island it is, you know. So I just thank you for educating us on these things that we
And no
should already
worries.
know.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of information that I don't know also about the other Pacific islands. So yeah.
Thank you for answering that. Yes, so we are learning a lot. So even though you're a team assistant, you're right now you're a teacher, a teacher, writer, author. So we appreciate you sharing always. I am going to reference The Strange Visitor, which is on page 34, if any of you have the book. And we have the first letter at the end of the poem, and it spells AIDS and HIV, or AIDS, HIV. Can you share more about the creating process and why you wanted to write about AIDS and HIV? AIDS, HIV?
Okay, so this type of poem is called an acrostic poem. An acrostic poem is a poem where the first letter of each line spells out a word or a message. The poem came about when I was exploring the different poetry techniques. It was also written during a time where a lot of awareness were being done on HIV and AIDS here in PNG. So I thought, since I was exploring different poetry techniques and it was during a time where a lot of awareness were done on HIV and AIDS, I thought that it was a perfect poetry technique to use to do an awareness on HIV and AIDS. So as a young person at the time, I tried to picture myself as the disease itself, speaking to people who were at risk of getting the disease. And, I was also taught that, it's always better to put yourself in a situation if you want to write. So you're writing from your point of view, in any poetry writing, which is a good skill of writing poems. So in doing so, I put myself, um, so being able to see myself as the HIV and AIDS helped me to better relay the message. So towards the end of the poem, I tried to use the acrostic poem technique to spell the words out in each of the lines as I wrote it, because it also helps the reader to know what this message is about. And because this message is specifically an awareness on HIV and AIDS, so I thought it would be good to end it in that way. So at the end of reading, you know that this poem is really an awareness on HIV and AIDS, and no other thing. Because usually you may have readers getting different sort of like interpretations of what the poem is, but an acrostic poem is specific to a specific message. So that's why I use the technique to relay that message.
Thank you. I'm just going to do a time check and make sure that you're okay, Caroline. It
Yeah,
is
I'm okay.
7. Okay. All right, so we'll keep on going. I'll just read the last parts where Caroline used acrostic technique, where it says, advancing and invading, you have been defeated already. So I hope you have learned a lesson and form all about my victory. So in the beginning of each of those lines, it spells AIDS and then HIV. Um, so thanks for sharing your thought process and just even the technique that you used to make it clear that this is the
Yeah.
message. So what do you hope for yourself from like 5 years from now?
I hope that my poems can be read by people all over the world, and I hope also that a lot of young people, especially in PNG, can find inspiration in what I do to get into writing. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, go ahead, Lilika.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to ask Caroline, are there any Pasifika poets that you look up to, or that inspire your writing, or even Papuan writers that you are inspired by, that inspire writing out there, that you would recommend that we can also look into maybe for our book club space as well?
Sure, I get my inspiration from most of my own Papua New Guinean writers. So most of my inspiration comes from them, but I'm also exploring like other writers from the Pacific, because I'd like to, gain more knowledge of what they're doing, just learn from them and use it in what I do as well. So I'm exploring other Pacific writers, but I get most of my inspiration from the Papua New Guinean writers that I'm connected with.
How just to piggyback off of that, how what is the writing community like in Papua New Guinea as authors and people who are writing books or poems? Is there like a collective, or how do you connect with other authors usually?
So before I became a published author, we had a we had an annual writing competition that used to be coordinated by former Kiabs to PNG, Australian Kiabs. So they formed what is known as the Crocodile Prize. So this used to be an annual competition. So I got I got into writing for the Crocodile Prize before I became a published author. And when I started writing for the Crocodile Prize, that was when I started to connect with other Papua New Guinean writers or authors, because it's not like we don't talk about authors in PNG like every day. It's a rare thing. You don't get to find it every day unless you are part of like a group of writers, or you write for a certain group. Then you'll be able to connect with these people. It's really difficult to know that there is an existing group of writers in the country. So when I was writing, I didn't know that there was an existing group of writers until I started writing for the Crocodile Prize. That was when I started to get connected with other writers. And this is what I also do now, because this information is not readily available to students who may have an interest in writing. I try to get out there and do information sessions where I give directions to people on where to go to, and point them to who they can speak to if they want to develop writing further and get into publishing. So there's really a small community of writers. And we've also, along with three other Papua New Guinean writers, we've created a group called the Plus Sing Sing. So what we do in this group, it's like a writer's blog where people can go to access resources and information in relation to writing and publishing. So we're also trying to make information more available to more people who would want to get into writing, but also be able to connect with Papua New Guinean authors and their books, so they can buy books from them and also read, so that they can know why it's important for a lot of people to get into writing. So we're trying to make that available. There's a very small community of writers, but I hope that in 5 years time we should have a big group of writers here in PNG.
Awesome. Do you find yourself leveraging social media to connect as well? And what's the process for you guys on growing and connecting writers and getting your work out there? Because I mean, we love this collection of poems, and it was a big deal for us to read something from a Papua New Guinea author.
Yeah, so I use social media a lot to get the word out, because a lot of young people are on social media, and that's the best way for me to connect with connect with people is through the use of social media. I do a lot of information sessions. So I invite people to attend the information sessions for free, because this is just me sharing knowledge with them. I do writing workshops. So these are for people who want to learn up to write and maybe get into publishing. And this is the writing workshops are more focused on techniques of writing and how to develop an idea into a story, and how do you take it further to the next process until you're publishing. So writing workshops are one thing that I do to educate a lot of people on writing. And I do school visits. So my school visits um, are basically me talking to students and teachers, and just giving inspirational talks. So just sharing my own knowledge of how I got into writing from when I was a student. So these are the three things that I do to just get the word out, and encourage a lot of people to get into writing.
Awesome. And so it sounds like you're definitely doing a lot of work and with your people from Papua New Guinea. So the next question is like, what would you pray for the people of Papua New Guinea?
To not limit themselves because of how they are viewed by the outside world, but to celebrate us for who we are. I think a lot of times we tend to focus a lot on what other people's views are about us, and the more we focus on what people think or say about us, it limits us in terms of exploring our talents and potentials, and developing them. So I really pray that a lot of people will tend to, find courage to develop themselves and accept ourselves for who we are, because we're unique, and that's what we should be proud of.
I love that, because that might sound like so specific to Papua New Guinea, but on average, we are our worst critics, and we let all those thoughts and negativity like seep into us. So it doesn't really matter like where you're from. Sometimes that's your biggest struggle, right? Is like getting that out of your head, and no matter where you're from. But I love that, to not limit themselves. So do you have any words of advice you would give Oceania people that want to better support people from Papua New Guinea?
Yeah, collaboration is the way forward, I believe. Connect with people who share the same passion as you. Let's share ideas, exchange knowledge, or even resources. That's the best way you can do to support us, or we can do to support you as well.
Appreciate that answer. Um, so do you accept any money? We appreciate your time, and if you have a PayPal or a Venmo, I know Pauline is really big on paying people for their time and their energy, and we would like to also contribute in any way that we can. We really appreciate you coming into this space, and if you let us know if you have a Venmo, we will happily send you over, a token of our appreciation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so just you can drop it in the chat, or if you have like a Venmo or a PayPal link, um, feel free to drop it in the chat, or we can reach out to you, like Lika said, on Instagram, if you prefer that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That sounds good. Are there any questions? I have one more last question, but if anyone here wants to ask a question, if they've been sitting on something, I will ask this last one, and then feel free to chime in. But the last question here is, what are your children interested in? And do they know you write and people across the world read your poetry? So what does that mean? What what does that mean to them? Like, what do you think that means to them?
So my children have a lot of interests. The oldest is 5 and the youngest is 3. And their interest keeps changing every day. So you don't know what their, niche is or whatever. But they do know that I am an author because, some of my books have both of them as characters in the book. So they already know that I'm an author, and they have their favorite books as well. I try to also educate them as much as possible, regarding the fact that I'm an author, what it means to be an author, and all of that. Most of my children's storybooks have them as characters, so it's really important for me to educate them on that. They will soon learn that my poems are read all over the world, and I hope that they will find inspiration in writing too. But yeah, they do know that I'm an author, and most times they tend to want to read my books more than the books that we pick up from the shop. So that's another inspiration that I get, in my writing journey, and that's why I got into writing for children's storybooks. And I hope to write more, and I hope that a lot of parents can find inspiration also to write books for their own kids and publish them, like your bedtime stories. That you can create bedtime stories for your kids and then publish them, and read to them. I found an inspiration from a video that I watched on Facebook. A father decided to publish his daughter's bedtime story that he wrote, and he used to read to her every night, and published it on her 9th birthday and gave it to her as a birthday present. So after I watched that video, I started writing books for my kids, and I also used them as characters in the books. And I found that they were more drawn to the books that had their names as characters in the books, and they would want to read that book every single day. So parents who struggle to read to their kids, or try to get their kids to read, this is a really good way to do that. Write a story for your child, have them as the character in the book, because you will find that they will always want to celebrate themselves in the book, especially if the character is portrayed as a hero or a champion in the book. Your child will always want to read it because he or she would always want to celebrate his or her achievement in that book. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Caroline. We really appreciate your time here. And surprisingly, we're barely 15 minutes over our hour, which is really good for us because we're not the best at timekeeping. But
That's
everything
all right.
you said is so true. It's so powerful when our children can see themselves in stories, and it resonates with them. So I just want to say thank you. I love sharing time and space. I'm going to actually give the mic to Lilika. She has her hand raised, and then we'll close out afterwards. Go ahead, Lilika.
Oh, sorry, Caroline. I'm not sure if you said this already, but I know how many books do you have published now? Or is it how many books currently?
So I've written 28 children's storybooks for an organization called the Library for All. So they were the ones that published those 28 books. I've self-published my poem book, Nanusina, and I've just recently published a children's storybook titled When I Grow Up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So 2 books independently published and 28 other books published by Library for All. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing, Caroline. You are definitely an inspiration to all of us as well. Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing with us. If you have any, last words of advice, words of wisdom that you would like to share with us, if any.
Everyone has their own story, and your story is a powerful tool that someone can use, to improve their lifestyle. So whatever story you have, don't be afraid to share it, because the most magical thing that anyone can offer to the world is a book. Remember, a book is a magical thing. Don't be afraid to share your story. Don't be afraid to publish your book. Yes.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you, Caroline. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Caroline.
And we're
Can we
going
take
to
a
close
picture?
out. Oh, yes. Does
Take a picture for our group page and send it to you. I'll take it and I'll count down and let everyone know if Brandy,
Okay.
if you want to turn your camera on. If not, it's okay. Hi, Brandy. And if you have the book, sorry, my book is on the phone, so. All right, I'll count down. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Alika.